different configurations of Bluetooth devices, and I'm trying to cross pass each other. Um, all right. Yeah, so Steve, let me get back to that. Okay, so how's my audio right now? I've made a change. I've got the headset, well, the things. Okay, now the question is, can somebody? Well, actually, I've got to check one other thing. That's earpods, AirPods coming in. Output needs to be stream. Okay, all right. Now, can we say somebody to check whether YouTube has got audio coming out from this point? And then Steve, back to. So Steve, I can potentially record direct on OBS and put it on YouTube. That is a possibility. Yeah, and everything's being super choppy. Man, we do this every freaking time. Okay, audio on YouTube is good. That's good. Good to hear. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. So we're going to talk Cringely today, but the problem I don't have time to get into it, but what I'm literally going to do, believe it or not, is I am going to show some Cringely like this. Literally, I'm going Cringely on my phone, Bluetooth to this external speaker, because trying to go in the system where I'm running it from here, piping it in, the configuration is just, I don't know, it's too fragile. Then the problem is, then I change it, and then I got to change it back every single time and then try not to screw it up. So I'm just giving up on it. Um, okay, let me see real quick. Wait. It's all just too fragile. No, so Steve, Discord does not have its own recording. I'm streaming. I'm sharing the screen. I'm sharing the screen of OBS to Discord. Yeah. So Steve, we oughta maybe try to configure this if we can grab some other time. Um, so there's also a difference between OBS. Well, sorry, Discord on Mac and Discord on Windows. But I do have a Windows machine now. I have a Windows laptop now that I didn't have previously. So Steve, if you'd be game, I would really appreciate it. Would have you like tomorrow or the weekend or some such thing, and we can try to maybe configure it. If you've got, again, it would have to be probably have to be sometime tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday. Um, okay. I'm going to try this thing. This is as kludgy as it gets, man. Remember to hit the attendance, please. Don't forget to hit the attendance. If you have watched on YouTube as a makeup, then put your John Hancock into the YouTube class makeup channel. Okay, and the pattern is there. First of all, do we have any housekeeping? Was the discussion Wednesday? What day is it? Thursday. Was the discussion on Tuesday good? Seemed relevant. I mean, I liked it, and I don't think it was like somehow disconnected from the class. I think it quite germane to the class, and also I really like it anytime I can just use the word germane because I just like that word. I stole this from my wife. Okay, it's her little phone holder, but the phone holder doesn't usually work well. I've got this thick Mophie battery case, like so, but it's really, really fat at the bottom. It's a built-in crash case. You can see it's a little dinged up, but it's a built-in crash case battery case. So I never, ever run out. I can go about 2 days with decently heavy use, day and a half, with decently heavy use without a charge. Okay. Appreciate the feedback, Matthew and Dave. So what I've actually got going here is that, guys, we are set up to this. I'm going to do a sound check. Where are we?
In the world. Computer giant IBM was not amused and fought back, launching its own PC
audio?
in 1981.
Oops, hang on a second.
Technology, IBM's PC was an enormous hit
Is
and
that
spawned
audio
many
okay?
imitators. The PC clones.
I'll get you video here in a sec.
But PCs were still a pain to use. A revolution was needed to make.
Okay. Okay, hold tight. Part trois. Okay, and I know this is like très clunky.
In 1980, just 4 years after being founded in a California garage, Apple was the biggest maker of PCs in the world. Computer giant IBM was not amused and fought back, launching its own PC in 1980.
I think we're all way out of sync.
The most dangerous man in Silicon Valley sits in an office in this building.
God.
People love him and hate him often.
Now the audio. Now we got that part working, and now the video and the audio is like. It's like a minute out of sync. It's not even close. Okay, let me try. I just quit the YouTube app. I have one other idea up my sleeve. I'm not dead yet. Open. I got a hot mic from somebody.
In 1980, just 4 years after being.
No. Okay, hold tight. I'm going old school. It's my last hurrah. It's the last hope I have. Hold tight. I am grabbing, since my audio, you should still be hearing me. I am grabbing just an aux cable from my music room. And I'm grabbing an old, by the way, hot mic still. Somebody who's got the hot mic. I'm bypassing Bluetooth on the phone entirely. I'm going old school iPad with an aux jack into my little speaker unit. Um, who's got? Okay, I don't know. I just heard somebody on the mic while I was walking. There's a couple people with mics on, which is no crime if nothing happens. Okay, I got a question for you. Love this in the chats. Real life situation. Tuesday, I spent some time professional setting with a business associate. Hang on, Steve. The link is actually in Canvas. The link is in the schedule on Canvas. Anyway, I spent time on Tuesday, about 3 hours. Had lunch together, conference room setting for a couple more hours. The next day, he tests positive for COVID. What's my play? That's my question for you. What is my play? Do I quarantine? Do I go get a test? Do I go get a COVID test to be on the safe side? Do I do that today? Do I wait to see if I'm symptomatic? Just curious what you think, what your play would be on that. Okay, I am working up my old school tech here. And we'll run live tests again here.
Story so far. In 1980, just 4 years after being founded in a California garage, Apple was the biggest maker of PCs in the world.
Okay, that audio is good, right?
Computer giant IBM was not amused and fought back, launching its own PC in 1981. Though built from
Give me audio is good. We're good with that. Okay, then what I'm going to do is this is so old school, it's embarrassing. I apologize in advance. I'm going to move this keyboard. This is just so I'm humiliated, okay? I'm just humiliated by just the whole play. And then I'm going to kill my podcast light. And I got to tip this back so it doesn't die that way. And then the question is, can I do this in such a way that it's actually like visible and reasonable? Hey guys. Okay, I'm going to try. Tell me if this thing just sucks and we may go, some alternative. Come on.
Cat technology, IBM's PC was an enormous hit and spawned many imitators. The PC clone. Story so far. In 1980, just 4 years after being founded in a California garage, Apple was the biggest maker of PCs in the world. Computer giant IBM was not amused and fought back, launching its own PC in 1981.
Okay, so burning questions so far. Okay, it's Omicron, Sam. Okay, burning question. Is that you saw it go for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds with the video? The audio synced up. I may just have to like watch from the side, although I've about got this thing memorized by now. What do you think? Yeah, Steve, that's what I'm talking about. The YouTube link to the video. Oh, you mean the so we're watching a bunch of videos off and on in class and little clips, and this is a YouTube video. Are you talking about, Steve, are you talking about The Social Dilemma? Because that one's on Netflix. And we have to watch that one on Netflix. The one I'm trying to play, the link to it is on Canvas. You can also just look at Triumph of the Nerds, um, Volume 3. Yeah, okay, here's the deal. Jake said whatever you did the last time we did this was way better. Yeah, and there was no audio on YouTube. That was the problem. Can I make the camera full screen? Yeah, I can, actually. Like so, or like we don't want to lose the meme. Yeah, what do you think? I know this sucks, okay? I know this sucks. I get it. Let me try one more bumpity bump. Hang on. It's hard to see. This is so dumb. It's so horribly dumb. Okay, what about that? What say you? That's not too bad. But now you got me like, you know, peeking in the side. I don't know if there's a way around it. I don't know. But that's bigger. Okay, let's try something.
Though built from copycat technology, IBM's PC was an enormous hit and spawned many imitators, the PC clones. But PCs were still a pain to use.
Are we okay?
A revolution was needed to make them friendlier. Now, view on.
Audio is okay. You can see the video. It's crazy low tech. What say you? Give me some thumbs up, thumbs down.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of Windows 95.
Yes. Well, welcome, Microsofties. Nice to have you all here. But now let's welcome the chairman of Microsoft. Listen to this. This is a man so successful, his chauffeur is Ross Perot, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Bill Gates.
It's August 24th, 1995, in a suburb of Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. This is the biggest, noisiest product launch in the history of the personal computer.
I'm still here,
It's
Sam.
Windows 95 software, and Bill Gates is the star, chairman, chief nerd, and spiritual leader of Microsoft.
But the truth is,
This is the latest step in Bill's dream to have his software running on every PC in the
I
world.
wonder.
we wanted people to be able to appreciate how Windows 95 makes computing faster, easier, and more fun. And for 7 years, it was a lonely, lonely crusade.
Reality Police.
This moves the whole PC industry up to a whole new level.
Wait a minute. All this publicity is so Bill Gates can claim that Windows 95 is the latest and perhaps most significant improvement in the PC since it was invented. He can say that his new operating system makes PCs nicer to look at and easier to use than ever before. They'll no longer be just for geeks and nerds. They'll be so easy to use that even my mother will want one. But you know what? Most of the ideas in Windows 95 were invented 20 years ago. The 20-year journey to this software celebration hasn't been easy. It has involved huge gambles, passionate commitment, dramatic setbacks, and required the occasional crushing of rivals and allies. It's the triumph of Bill Gates' commercial vision. Success in the marketplace doesn't have to come from innovation or from being the best. if you have a ruthless ability to exploit your opportunities. And the way Microsoft made the PC's graphical user interface its own is a textbook example of that ability. Time for another Cringely crash course in elementary computing. In the early days of personal computing, the machines were pretty hard to use. In part, that's because they were primitive, but it's also because computer guys tend to like things that are pretty hard to use. This is an IBM PC circa about 1983, and on it, I've written a letter to my bank manager asking him to back one of my quick schemes. I need to file the letter now, and let me show you how I do it. There will be a test on this. Okay, the commands are copy, C, colon, backslash, quickrich, doc, space, A, colon, backslash, begging, and return. Well, not very easy to do. Here's a Windows PC about 12 years newer, and we'll do exactly the same thing. I've written a document, quickrich.doc, and I put it in the begging file, and yes, I really do mean to do it, and that's it. Pictures rather than words, making the PC easy and intuitive. This is called a graphical user interface, GUI or GUI. Where do they come up with these names? The battle to bring GUIs to PCs and make them more user-friendly took 10 years and is a hell of a story. That's what this program is about. It's also about how Bill Gates ended up master of the GUI universe and a gazillionaire. I never said it was a fairy story. It all began in 1971 in Palo Alto, just south of San Francisco, when Xerox, the copier company, set up the Palo Alto Research Center, or PARC. Xerox management had a sinking feeling that if people started reading computer screens instead of paper, Xerox was in trouble. Unless they could dominate the paperless office of the future.
You could take computer technology into the office and make the office a much better place to work, more productive, more enjoyable, a lot more enjoyable, more interesting, more rewarding, and so we set to work on it.
Bob Taylor ran PARC's computer science lab, and one of the first things he did was to buy beanbags for his researchers to sit on and brainstorm.
These are a couple of the original beanbag chairs. The role of the beanbag chair in computer science is ease of use.
Okay. It was said that of the top 100 computer researchers in the world, 58 worked at PARC. Strange, as the staff never exceeded 50.
You didn't get your butt low enough.
But Taylor gave these nerd geniuses unlimited resources and protected them from commercial pressures. It's very comfortable.
Now let's see you get out of it.
I feel my neural capacity already increasing.
There you go.
Oh, God.
The atmosphere of PARC was electric. There was total intellectual freedom. There was no conventional wisdom. Almost every idea was up for challenge and got challenged regularly.
The management said,
By the way,
Go
Warnick
create
did his PhD
the
at
new world.
Utah.
We don't understand it. Here are people who have a lot of ideas and tremendous talent, young, energetic.
People came there specifically to work on 5-year programs that were their dreams.
This is a computer room in the basement of the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. About 25 years ago, they built the Max time system in here, and now it's loaded with all sorts of other computers. And there's one that we're really interested in here. Let's see. Here it is. Let me turn on the lights. Okay, here we have it. This is a Xerox Alto computer built around 1973. Some people would argue that this is the first personal computer. It really isn't, because for one thing, it wasn't ever for sale, and the parts alone cost about $10,000. But it has all the elements of quite a modern personal computer, and without it, we wouldn't have the Macintosh, we wouldn't have Windows, we wouldn't have most of the things we value in computing today. And ironically, none of those things has a Xerox name on it.
What's the mail this morning?
This promotional film, made in the mid-70s to flaunt Xerox PARC research, shows just how revolutionary the Alto was. It was friendly and intuitive.
This is an experiment.
Hey, there's a survey. If you didn't see it already on the Discord chat, there's a survey. I'd love it if you'd give me a quick yes, no.
It was linked to other PCs by a system called Ethernet, the first computer network. And what you saw on the screen was precisely what you got on your laser printer. It was way ahead of its time.
Everybody wanted to make a real difference. We really thought we were changing the world, and that at the end of this project, or the set of projects, personal computing would burst on the scene exactly the way we had envisioned it and take everybody by total surprise.
But the brilliant researchers at PAR could never persuade Xerox management that their vision was accurate. Head office in New York ignored the revolutionary technologies they owned 3,000 miles away. They just didn't get it.
And none of the main body of the company was prepared to accept the answers. So there was a tremendous mismatch between the management and what the researchers were doing, in that these guys had never fantasized about what the future of the office was going to be, and when it was presented to them, they had no mechanisms for turning those ideas into real-life products. And that was really the frustrating part of it, because you were talking to people who didn't understand the vision. And yet the vision was getting created every day within the Palo Alto Research Center, and there was no one to receive that vision.
But a few miles down the road from Palo Alto was a man ready to share the vision. The most dangerous man in Silicon Valley sits in an office in this building. People love him and hate him, often at the same time. For 10 years, by sheer force of will, he made the personal computer industry follow his direction. With this guy, we're not talking about someone driven by the profit motive and a desire for an opulent retirement at the age of 40. No, we're talking holy war. We're talking rivers of blood and fields of dead martyrs to the cause of greater computing. We're talking about a guy who sees the personal computer as his tool for changing the world. We're talking about Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. When I wasn't sure what the word charisma meant, I met Steve Jobs, and then I knew.
Steve Jobs is on my eternal heroes list. There's nothing he can ever do to get off it.
He wanted you to be great. And he wanted you to create something that was great. And he was going to make you do that.
He's also obnoxious. And this comes from his high standards. He has extremely high standards, and he has no patience with people who don't either share those standards or perform to them.
And I'm also one of these people that I don't really care about being right, you know. I just care about success.
Steve Jobs had co-founded Apple Computer in 1976. The first popular personal computer, the Apple II, was a hit and made Steve Jobs one of the biggest names in a brand new industry. At the height of Apple's early success in December 1979, Jobs, then all of 24, had a privileged invitation to visit Xerox PARC.
And they showed me really three things. But I was so blinded by the first one that I didn't even really see the other two. One of the things they showed me was object-oriented programming. They showed me that, but I didn't even see that. The other one they showed me was really a networked computer system. They had over 100 Alto computers, all networked, using email, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't even see that. I was so blinded by the first thing they showed me, which was the graphical user interface. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. Now, remember, it was very flawed. What we saw was incomplete. They'd done a bunch of things wrong, but we didn't know that at the time. It's still, though, they had the germ of the idea was there, and they'd done it very well. And within, 10 minutes, it was obvious to me that all computers would work like this someday.
It was a turning point. Jobs decided this was the way forward for Apple.
He came back and, I almost said asked, but the truth is demanded that his entire programming team get a demo of the Smalltalk system. And the then head of the Science Center asked me to give the demo because Steve specifically asked for me to give the demo. And I said, no way. I had a big argument with the Xerox executives telling them that they were about to give away the kitchen sink. And I said I would only do it if I were ordered to do it, because then, of course, would be their responsibility. And that's what they did.
The mouse is a pointing device that moves a cursor around the display screen.
Adele and her colleagues showed the Apple programmers an Alto machine running a graphical user interface.
A selected window displays above other windows, much like placing a piece of paper on top of a stack on a desk.
The visitors from Apple saw a computer that was designed to be easy to use, a machine that anybody could operate and find friendly, even the French.
Choose one.
I think mostly what we got in that hour and a half was inspiration. And basically just sort of a bolstering of our convictions that a more graphical way to do things would make this business computer more accessible.
After an hour looking at demos, they understood our technology more than any Xerox executive understood it after years of showing it to them.
Basically, they were copier hits that just had no clue about a computer, what it could do. And so they just grabbed defeat from the greatest victory in the computer industry. Xerox could have owned the entire computer industry today. Could have been, a company 10 times its size. Could have been IBM. Could have been the IBM of the 90s. Could have been the Microsoft of the 90s.
Okay, I just want to pause for a second. You can't see my face because I don't want to change. I don't want to move any of this equipment. You can see my hand there. Talk to the hand. No, the orders of ignorance. This is about the orders of ignorance. What you don't know that you don't know. It's it's the way in which our frameworks they just lock us in. You know what I mean? And then you just can't see. You just can't see what you can't see. You have no framework. And one of my sort of like truisms that and I think it probably started with this Cringely video, watching it many times over the years, teaching and showing some of this history. Just this idea that when you're getting into business and you've got competition, ask yourself, what is the business that your competitor is in? Because you might feel like, well, we're both in let's pick something stupid and old, word processors. We're both in the word processor business. But is that really true? One of you might actually be in the operating system business, or in the business of selling a certain thing, or of selling certain subscriptions, or of selling, there's a model, and you've got to get your head inside. I did a product one time, that wound up being really, really successful. But somebody asked me the question at the time, what stops, big company A from just looking at what you did and knocking it off, right, in a week? What stops them from that? And at the time, I gave some credence. I gave some credence to the question. Today, I would give no credence to the question. For starters, every company has their own, sort of, what do you want to call it? Set of priorities, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 1-year plan. I mean, they're booked. They're not going to spin a team up to go knock off your little app because besides all that, they can't see the vision, because it's just typically, it has to be big enough for them to suddenly notice, I mean, and in that kind of a world, if you're a multi-billion-dollar company, acquisitions even don't get interesting until about $50 million. 10, 20, 30, $50 million. Startup land, you're like, wow, that's quite the sale. But if you just have a great idea, the likelihood that the other guys are going to see it, get it, from coming from the perspective of having not invented it, it's just really, really low. If you begged them to take it, the odds are they wouldn't appreciate it or take it, wouldn't know how to do it. And some of that also is reinforced by the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Highly recommend. And if somebody would like to go find the Lean Startup on Amazon and drop a link, that would be great. I'm gonna keep this thing going. And if you have any other comments, you want to just drop comments on that in the chat, just fire away. All right, let me get this guy going. You know how hard this is to do? From behind in reverse.
For Steve Jobs, the road to Damascus passed through Palo Alto. He persuaded the Apple board to invest in technology copying what he'd seen at Xerox PARC, his instrument of change. They hired 100 engineers and started developing a new PC codenamed Lisa. But there were problems. The Lisa didn't work properly, and its price tag was heading toward $10,000. Way too much for the average PC buyer. Jobs' domineering style drove everyone nuts, too, so the board ousted him from his own pet project.
I brooded for a few months. But it was not very long after that it really occurred to me that if we didn't do something here, the Apple II was running out of gas. And we needed to do something with this technology fast, or else Apple might cease to exist as the company that it was.
Jobs got his answer from Jeff Raskin, Apple employee number 31. Raskin's idea was a $600 computer, as easy to use as a toaster, codenamed Macintosh, after America's favorite Apple. Jobs liked the price, but not Raskin's design ideas, so Steve took over the Macintosh project, determined to make it a cheaper Lisa.
And so I formed a small team to do the Macintosh, and we were on a mission from God, to save Apple.
While Jobs pursued his Mac mission, he needed a more orthodox chief executive to run the company, a respectable face who could sell to corporate America. He chose Pepsi-Cola executive John Sculley. Sculley refused. Leave Pepsi for a 4-year-old company that had been set up in a garage? Are you serious? But it was hard saying no to Steve Jobs.
And then he looked up at me and just stared at me with this stare that only Steve Jobs has. And he said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And I just gulped, because I knew I would wonder for the rest of my life, what I would have missed.
Yeah. Well, or
for the young Mac team, average age 21, this was the start of the toughest but most exhilarating assignment of their lives, relentlessly driven by Jobs' ego.
Oh, look at this. And who's this fresh-faced young guy here?
That's me 11 years ago. Had more hair, I guess. A little thinner. Well, I love these people. They're like family to me, really. And we were united by this common bond of trying to do this incredible thing with the Mac.
Jobs wanted the Mac to revolutionize the PC market, so he insisted that the team deliver perfection.
Steve was upset that the Mac took too long to boot up when you first turned it on. So he tried motivating Larry Kenyon by telling him, well, you know how many millions of people are going to buy this machine? There's going to be millions of people. And let's imagine that you can make it boot 5 seconds faster. Well, that's 5 seconds times a million every day. That's 50 lifetimes. If you can shave 5 seconds off that, you're saving 50 lives. And so, it was a nice way of thinking about it. And we did get it to go faster. And then this is one of the very first Macintosh wire wraps. This is wire wrap board number 4.
As the Mac progressed, new features were being continually added. Jobs said the Mac had to be insanely great and pushed his engineers to the limit. He had to, because by early 1983, Apple was in trouble. And this is what was giving Apple such a headache. IBM's first PC launched in August 1981. It was a runaway success. Within a couple of years, more than 2 million units had been shipped, overtaking Apple and making Big Blue the biggest player in the market.
When IBM personal computer owners look for good software, where can they turn? To IBM.
What was driving IBM PC sales was software.
Business programs, entertainment, productivity, education.
But software for an IBM wouldn't run on the Mac. If the Macintosh was to succeed, Jobs needed killer applications. Enter 25-year-old software supremo, Bill Gates. At that time, his company, Microsoft, had 100 workers and was growing like crazy thanks to DOS, the operating system that drove the IBM PC. But DOS sure wasn't a GUI. Gates and his aggressive number two, Steve Ballmer, were immediately intrigued by the Mac.
Jobs talked to Bill at some industry conference and said, hey, we're doing, I think Lisa was sort of in development. He said, but I'm going to do the graphical interface machine here at Apple. Not just that Lisa thing, Bill. I'm going to do the one that's really going to be the winner.
While the Mac was being developed, Jobs staged an event, a parody of a TV game show, to whip up enthusiasm among software developers.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Macintosh software dating game.
Jobs got the three top software bosses of the time to sing the Mac's praises. One of them was Bill Gates. Steve didn't realize he was opening the door to the man who'd proved to be Apple's main rival.
When was your first date with Macintosh?
We've been working with the Mac for almost 2 years now, and we put some of our really good people on it, and even before we finished our work on the IBM PC, Steve Jobs came and talked about what he wanted to do, that he thought he could do sort of a Lisa, but cheaper. We said, boy, we'd love to help out. The Lisa had all its own applications, but of course they required a lot of memory, and we thought we could do better. And so Steve signed a deal with us to actually provide bundled applications for the first Mac. And so we were big believers in the Mac and what Steve was doing there.
Most people don't remember, but until the Mac, Microsoft was not in the applications business. It was dominated by Lotus. And Microsoft took a big gamble to write for the Mac.
And so we got started in early 1982 on our Macintosh software effort. And I think at that point in time, it really clicked with Bill that, graphic user interface was going to be the way of the future.
But while Bill was having his own GUI revelation, Jobs believed that Apple's true enemy was IBM.
Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry? The entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?
Despite Steve Jobs' showmanship, the IBM PC was hurting Apple's business.
And most pundits considered that Apple was going to be out of business. In a few short months, Business Week ran an article on their cover saying, it's over, IBM has won.
The Mac team saw themselves as Apple's pirates, but the gang was now being called on to save the ship, as the Apple II was losing precious market share.
In the case of the Macintosh team, they were behind schedule in getting the Mac out, which is not unusual in high technology. And so just getting that product to market was extremely important.
After many delays, a date for the launch of the Mac was announced. The pressure of the deadline was mounting, but Steve was still a perfectionist.
No design issue was too small, and it was never too late to do it right.
Oh, it was a pressure cooker. We were working until we finished. We couldn't go to sleep or anything. I was up for 3 days before in that very last push. And finally, just the stars aligned, and the last release we made at 6 a.m. that morning.
It was now all or nothing because Lisa had turned out an expensive flop. The fate of the whole company seemed to rest on the launch of the Mac. John Sculley had even authorized a $15 million advertising campaign to coincide with the Mac's public unveiling, January 24th, 1984.
I remember how nervous Steve was before the introduction of the Macintosh. And the rehearsal the night before was a total disaster. Nothing seemed to go right. Steve was upset at everybody. We wondered how in the world we were ever going to get through the introduction the following day. But when that moment came, Steve was a master showman.
There have only been two milestone products in our industry. The Apple II in 1977 and the IBM PC in 1981. Today, 1 year after Lisa, we are introducing the third industry milestone product, Macintosh. Many of us have been working on Macintosh for over 2 years now, and it has turned out insanely great. You've just seen some pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person.
Okay, you're about to see some graphics, and you have to put this in historical context. Okay? You have to put this in historical context. I mean, nothing like that had ever been seen on a personal computer screen.
With a genuine graphical user interface. It was also the first computer to be a monument to one man's ego. Forget the brilliant work done at Xerox PARC and the innovations borrowed from the Lisa. On the day, only one man was claiming paternity for the Mac.
So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
You have to realize, at this point, the world is DOS and Unix.
I was standing off stage.
Unix command
and as
line.
he came off, he said, "This is, the proudest, happiest moment of my life," and it was all over his face. It clearly was, because he had launched a revolution.
Ultimately, it comes down to taste. It comes down to trying to expose yourself to the best things that humans have done, and then try to bring those things in to what you're doing. I mean, Picasso had a saying. He said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And we have, always been shameless about stealing great ideas. And I think part of what made the Macintosh great was that the people working on it were musicians and poets and artists and zoologists and historians who also happen to be the best computer scientists in the world.
With delusions of grandeur running rampant, Apple created a Hollywood-style TV commercial. It symbolized how the friendly Mac would free us from the Orwellian tyranny of clunky
Sorry,
IBM
I'm just trying
PCs.
to pause for a second. Yeah, I just want to say this thing that he said, that Jobs said about poets and musicians and whatever, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's an absolutely true statement. Now, everyone's got to be true to their own personality, but I'm just saying, if I have two developers, two software engineers, then that's my world is software, not hardware. But if I have two software engineers and, no two things are identical, right? No two things are perfectly alike. But if I have two software developers and they are, for all intents and purposes, equivalent, and one of them is a musician, or one of them is a poet, or one of them is an artist, or one of them, is a polyglot, which is somebody that speaks multiple languages, or, if one of them is bringing other sort of non-computing side of the brain ideas to bear, I will take the artist, I will take the musician, the poet, over the person who is equally as talented, but whose entire world is purely technology. There's something about, and I would just encourage everybody, just as a side note, to branch out, fill your life with, if you're developing during the day, and then your hobby is to write code for open source projects on the weekend. I mean, be true to yourself. I'm just saying you'll have broader design ideas if you're doing other things where your brain is stretching to other parts, which is why at the end of the semester, I will force you to write poetry in the literary extravaganza. That's why I'm doing that in part, and trying to help you become better writers. Okay, end of speech.
Please. Despite the hype, by late 1984, the Mac's sales were disastrous.
This is a highly sophisticated office computer.
In ad after ad, Apple desperately pointed out that the Mac was far easier to use than the IBM PC. but it sold for $2,500, $1,000 more than the IBM. And despite Jobs' best efforts in recruiting software makers like Bill Gates, applications were scarce.
It didn't do very much. We had Mac Paint and Mac Write were our only applications.
Okay, I got one more comment.
The market started to...
So in 1984, yeah, 1984, I was going to school in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, and my roommate actually had one. My roommate bought an original Mac, for like $2,000. I remember it was in 1984 dollars. We're college students. Dude dropped $2,000. We were everybody in the apartment. There were four of us. Everybody was CS major, and the other one was an electrical engineering major. So it was definitely nerd central. But he bought it, and so I played with a Mac in 1984, and it was really one of the first things. I mean, it was cool. It was intriguing. It was different. It was graphic. But all it had was Mac Write and Mac Paint. It was literally the only apps on this thing. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Figure this out. By the end of the year, people said, well, maybe the IBM PC isn't as easy to use or is not as attractive as the Macintosh, but it actually does something which we want to be able to do, spreadsheets, word processing, and database. And so we started to see the sales of the Mac tail off towards the end of 1984, and that became a problem following year.
Cringely's third law of personal computing was right again. To succeed, a PC must have an application which alone justifies buying the whole box. The IBM PC had Lotus 123. The Mac needed its killer application. WYSIWYG, another bunch of initials from the world of the nerds. What you see is what you get. So what's the big deal? Well, it turns out that it's very hard to print on paper exactly the same image that you see on the computer screen. 80% of our brain is devoted to processing visual data, but that's not the same for computers. I've been here writing a letter to my mom, and I'm signing it Bob in 72-point Times Roman italic type, as befitting myself. And when I tell it to print, what comes out is a Bob, but certainly not the Bob that I'd intended. Until someone invented a way to print exactly what was on the screen, GUI would be, well, a lot of hooey. Apple's problem was the dot matrix printer. It gave everything a typewriter quality. But salvation was at hand, and once again it owed a lot to Xerox PARC. One of PARC's former brains, John Warnock, had invented a technology that allowed a laser printer to print exactly, precisely what was on your screen. He started a company called Adobe to market his invention.
And what we had figured out how to do that no one else had figured out how to do is drive laser printers.
Within 2 or 3 weeks, we had canceled our internal project. A bunch of people wanted to kill me over this, but we did it. And I had cut a deal with Adobe to use their software, and we bought 19.9% of Adobe at Apple.
Let me see.
The investment paid off.
So this part I actually clipped out of my version that's on the laptop because this guy starts talking about how he wanted to do desktop publishing. I'm like, that's
user-friendly GUI gave birth to a brand new business, desktop publishing.
This is not desktop publishing. This is
the spreadsheet
digital
had made
art,
us all
or whatever.
accountants. Now, using breakthrough software, we could create fancy artwork, snappy-looking notepaper, even counterfeit money.
Okay, hang on a second.
The
So
Mac had found its killer application and would soon...
I'm going to just zoom ahead a little bit. Let's try this.
Mac was a hot seller from the start.
The grandiose plans of what Macintosh were going to be was just so far out of whack with the truth of what the product was doing. And the truth of what the product was doing was not horrible. It was salvageable. But the gap between the two was just so unthinkable that somebody had to do something, and that somebody was John Sculley.
John Sculley, whom Jobs saw as his own creation, presented the board with his strategy to save the company. The plan did not include Steve Jobs.
The board had to make a choice, and I said, look, it's Steve's company. I was brought in here to help. If you want him to run it, that's fine with me. But we've got to at least decide what we're going to do, and everyone's got to get behind it.
But he took it as a personal attack, started attacking Scully, in which backed himself into a corner because he was sure that the board would support him and not Scully.
And ultimately, after the board talked with Steve and talked with me, the decision was that we would go forward with my plans, and Steve left.
What can I say? I hired the wrong guy.
That was Scully?
Yeah. And he destroyed everything I'd spent 10 years working for. Starting with me, but that wasn't the saddest part. I would have gladly left Apple if Apple would have turned out like I'd wanted it to.
I don't believe that, by the way.
People in the company had very mixed feelings about it. Everyone had been terrorized by Steve Jobs at some point or another, and so there was a certain relief that the terrorist would be gone. And on the other hand, I think there was incredible respect for Steve Jobs by the very same people. And we were all very worried what would happen to this company without the visionary, without the founder, without the charisma.
Apple never recovered from losing Steve. Steve was the heart and soul and driving force. It would be quite a different place today. They lost their soul.
So let me see.
The years after Steve Jobs left were the most profitable for Apple Computer.
What happens next, of course, Apple kind of wanders in the desert a little bit, and then Jobs comes back. What Jobs actually is, I'm going to kind of cut to the chase because we're running a little short on time. I'm just see if there's something more that I want to cite to here. Let me see here.
And you say, well, why is that important?
Okay, I want to just play this one clip. Okay, check this out.
The most open system that was adopted by the most other companies. And the Microsoft strategy ultimately turned out to be the better business strategy.
The only problem with Microsoft is they just have no taste. They have absolutely no taste. And what that means is, I don't mean that in a small way, I mean that in a big way. In the sense that they don't think of original ideas, and they don't bring much culture into their product. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, proportionally spaced fonts come from typesetting and beautiful books. That's where one gets the idea. If it weren't for the Mac, they would never have that in their products. And so I guess I am saddened, not by Microsoft's success. I have no problem with their success. They've earned their success for the most part. I have a problem with the fact that they just make really third-rate products.
I will admit, quite frankly, that I think Windows today is probably 4 years behind, 3 years behind, where it would have been had we not danced with IBM for so long. Because the amount of split energy, split work, split IQ in the company really cost our end customer real innovation in our product line. And so whenever I hear these criticisms, which I got to say sting sometimes, I say to myself, just you watch Windows 95, Windows 9. There's no lack of focus. There hasn't been here for the last 3-4 years since we didn't have this big split with IBM.
So that's just such a classic quote. And apparently there's a true story that after this thing aired in 1996, after this thing aired, yeah, I think that's probably good enough for showing the video. But after this thing aired, Bill Gates called Steve Jobs, and I guess when you're Bill Gates, I mean, I think those guys were sort of friends of a certain type, competitors and friends, probably had each other's cell numbers, But anyway, but Bill Gates called up Steve Jobs and was um, like, you really said my company has no taste, you know? And Ken Gates said, maybe it's true that I have no taste, but my whole company has no taste. And Jobs, hang on a second. And Jobs' response was, well, I shouldn't have said it. It's true, but I shouldn't have said it. And that was their moment. Anyway, and the kid that they were, who's the guy? Hang on a second. I killed some lighting to kill some of the glare on that. Who's the guy? One of the guys that was the original developers of the Mac. What's his name? Anyway, he told a story in a clip in an interview with Cringely, actually, about this exchange between Steve Jobs and no, not Wozniak, not Woz. It was the guy that was interviewed in this little clip where they showed him the picture of the original Mac team, and he says, "I love these people," and who says he was up for 3 days, before the demo of the Mac. Oh, I know his name. His last name starts with an H. Anyway, yeah, no, he told that story about Jobs and Bill Gates. No, this is an amazing episode. That whole episode, and the other thing that gets talked about in this is, man, I want to say it's Herzog. It's not Herzog. Hers something. No, but what I want to say is, the other thing that happened was that uh, Apple sued when Windows came out, when Microsoft shipped Windows. Apple sued Windows for copyright infringement. So they didn't say you stole our code. They didn't say it was source code misappropriation or trade secret misappropriation. But it turns out that you could, I think this is still the law, but I'd have to go double check. The law changes. There's new, what do they call it? Precedents, in court cases that become, kind of guiding ideas. But where you basically could copyright the look and feel of software, right? And Apple sued Microsoft for violating the copyright of the look and feel of the Mac, of that graphic user interface in Windows. Anybody see any problem with this? Which, by the way, I think it may have gone all the way to the Supreme Court. But it was certainly going all the way. Andy Hertzfeld, thank you. Thank you, Spencer. No, what's problem? What's problem? Based on what you just saw here today in the video, what's problem with Apple suing Microsoft? This was the 90s, by the way. Sorry. Yeah. No, late 80s, actually. Late 80s was when Windows was first being developed. Windows 1, which I played with at HP in 1988. I think it was Windows version 1. Yeah, no, exactly. Couldn't Xerox have sued Apple for the same thing? Yup. I'm not saying that you have to understand so one of my big philosophies in all of the discussions we've had, logical fallacies, thinking about topics and being respectful and everything else. I'm a big fan of the idea that you can hold in your mind two ideas at the same time, two or more ideas. Is this scary to have me this big on the screen? I can put myself back up in my corner if we need. You can hold multiple ideas in your mind at the same time. This is really important. So, for example, Apple, because we tend to get into real black and white thinking. Oh, Apple just, Apple took everything from Xerox. No, they took a bunch of things. Apple didn't create anything. They just ripped off Xerox. No, they ripped off Xerox and did many things. There's you can do multiple ideas at the same time. And so Apple had created and had refined, and I still to this day, my interface biases or biases are very much, they lean pretty strongly Apple, from a just personal preference on interface. I used Windows. Well, let me see. The first real GUI interface that I kind of deeply cut my teeth on was OS2. And the second interface that I cut my teeth on, kind of because OS2 just died, was Windows. And it was probably Windows 95, I think, was actually, yeah, it was after OS2, starting with 1.0, actually. And then ending at OS2 version 4, which was Warp, aptly named. I shifted to Windows out of necessity because it broke. Around that same time, I shifted from WordPerfect to Word because WordPerfect put me in the same position. Product broke, would not work, and forced me out of necessity to use the competitor's product. This is not how you do it. And it was probably from 88 to 96, 97, I used OS2. From 96, 97 until about 2005, for about another decade, I used Windows, whatever the latest Windows was. Windows 2000, Windows 95, Windows 2000, Windows whatever. And then somewhere in the about mid 2000s, I first used a MacBook, and there was a little bit of a learning curve, as some of you know, in this process. And then I wondered why in the crap I had suffered for so long. This is just, I'm not selling you on this idea. I'm just disclosing my biases at a personal level in terms of just software systems, operating system stuff. I've also used X Windows on Unix before Linux was a thing, and then I've used Linux, which I don't even know what that interface is. It might still be X Windows. So anyway, just saying, I've used a lot of different OSs, and I've also extensively used DOS. I mean, my first real, operating system with any sort of professional and personal longevity was actually DOS. But I've used, the Apple II and that Apple OS, whatever that was. I don't even remember what they called it. I've, worked machines that were not Intel that were running CPM, right? Remember CPM from Digital Research, the Monterey company, right? I've used that, which was basically DOS. So I think I've used, just about, as far as desktops go, just about every, possible laptop or, whatever, operating system since, I don't know, the 70s, really since the Apple II was the first real commercially viable desktop machine, not laptop. Anyway, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, in my opinion, the Mac interface got it right in a big way compared to Windows, and it has a lot to do with corporate culture. Corporate culture has a lot to do with who's at the top. And you look at the personalities of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and you see that personality percolate down for a number of reasons, including that we tend to hire people who are like ourselves. If we're a poet, we tend to hire poets. If we're a musician, And so I said I favor somebody who's a musician and a poet because I am also a musician and a poet. I don't know how good I am, but I'm just saying I lean that way. So I'll tend to hire people like that. You know, there's a kind of a natural byproduct of all that. Anyway, so Apple lost, and Windows was free to do their thing. So that's the true story of all that. We're about out of time. Dave, Abraham was telling you that the automotive shop at UVU still uses DOS. There must be some reason. There must be some. That's crazy, though. That's crazy. That's insane. Anyway. Alrighty. Hey, we're out of time. Did this work? This was so stupid. Till next time. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe Steve, if you got some time Friday or Saturday, let's maybe see if we can debug it and get the thing configured up to work kind of just natively. I can also configure my my Windows machine and then not touch it because I only use that when I have to have a Windows machine for some reason. Yeah, Steve, we'll set it up and configure. Then I just grab the machine and we're going. That's what I need to do. I still like OBS. Okay, we're out. We're out. Get out of here. I still like OBS a lot. I feel like OBS is really great software. And I love Discord. Alrighty. Okay. Later.